Hey friends, welcome to the webinar Fresh Ideas in Planting, Learning from Fellow Planters in IFES. My name is Kurt Thiel and I am the InterVarsity Link Director. Now what is InterVarsity Link? We are a part of InterVarsity focused on connecting the U.S., students and staff across the U.S. with students and staff throughout the world through the IFES. InterVarsity is a member movement of IFES, and we want to be in a position to learn and to grow and to partner. And we do that primarily by connecting students and staff to other movements, hearing about opportunities to serve in God's beautiful world. So this webinar is an opportunity to listen to some voices from around the world. Some of these voices are InterVarsity Link staff who have or are currently serving in different IFES movements, and also some students and staff from other movements who are here to share with us. We asked each presenter to just talk about their location, their planting journey, what they're up to, as well as kind of like, what's your secret sauce? What's your secret in seeing God move powerfully through your planting experience? This is actually a follow-up from the Ambition Conference where we focused on planting, and it's like, why don't we take an opportunity to learn from some others who have gone down this path and be open to learning from different cultures and experiences around the world? Tom Lynn talked about InterVarsity being interdependent with IFES. It goes both ways. We have things to offer. We have things to learn. So I hope you enjoyed this unique perspective on planting from around the IFES. Enjoy. Mario is here from Barbados. He's the General Secretary. He's a good friend, and he loves his country and wants to reach the whole nation, which is amazing when one staff can reach the whole nation. So take it away, Mario.
It's like 3 minutes of my presentation there, but yeah. That's okay. Yeah, hello again, everybody. So to be brief, let me just get straight to the story. Before serving as General Secretary, I did join staff to work with tertiary students. In the Caribbean, there are a lot of chapters at the high school level and even at the primary school level. And it's perhaps a lot stronger at those levels than it is at tertiary. So in Barbados, there was nobody serving the tertiary movement for maybe a good decade before I came on staff. So essentially all of my work ended up being pioneering work. But just one in particular, there was a technical vocational school, and I guess a part of the challenge that they were having, well, the two sides to the challenge. One is just socially, there is a stigma attached to tech voc education where it's seen as lesser than, looked down on a bit, and you have issues with discipline and different things like that that come into play with those things. So there's already a sense in which they weren't necessarily the most celebrated students. And then alongside that, the programs usually are a lot shorter. So students don't stay within the school for very long. So you have 1 year programs, 1 semester programs sometimes. Probably the longest time that you do a course for is 2 years. So the transient nature of the students made it very difficult to sustain anything that you get started, because you may meet with a few students and get something going, and half of them are gone in 8 weeks, and you kind of started from scratch again. So that's really what we were up against when we started looking at establishing a group there. And I would say 2 things that really helped with just kind of cementing the work that we were putting in was investing in developing leaders, investing in equipping students to be leaders, rather than spending time trying to find students that fit a particular mold, taking advantage of the fact that somebody was willing and available And then just using what God has given us, the resources that we have, using those things to equip them to lead well. And I think that really turns things around in the sense that some students who may have doubted themselves started to see God work and work through them in some amazing ways. And I think it was a major boost for them, not just within the context of ministry, but just all around. As I said before, there's still that idea attached to, oh, I go to this particular school and it's really not, up there with the others. So the idea of bringing light and hope is not just something that we offer to people who don't know Jesus. Sometimes even people who know Jesus need that sense of hope and usefulness in the context of just their everyday existence as students. So I think that was one of the great things that we were able to offer by just the work of planting the chapter there. The other thing that I want to say made a big difference was there was an IFES graduate who was a lecturer there. Well, I shouldn't say was, still is there. And when we built a relationship with her, and she saw that there was because we didn't have a graduate movement per se, but when she realized, hey, there's still a way that I can serve the same mission that I was a part of as a student, now that I am faculty, she really, grabbed onto that and went full throttle with that. And the students have really benefited from the access, the doors that she's been able to open for them, the opportunities that she's been able to make available to them, and the fact that she is a constant, even as all of these students are, kind of transitioning in and out of the system, has really helped to sustain the work there. So yeah, that's my story, and those are a couple of things that I thought I would share from that experience.
Thanks, Mario. Yeah. I love what you said about that type of a campus. There are many campuses like that, often community college campuses that have that kind of transient nature. And I love how the faculty is key because they're there all the time.
Right.
We'll be there every semester. And also I just love how you just figured out, I'm going to invest in leaders and give them a vision so they'll carry the ministry. That's wonderful. Thank you. Rachel Waters is a Link staff serving in Costa Rica. Now, maybe you all haven't heard of Link, but Link is when an InterVarsity graduate or staff worker wants to go serve in another IFES movement. And so she was invited with her family to serve in Costa Rica. So take it away, Rachel.
Yeah, I'm serving in Costa Rica for the last 3.5 years with my 4 children, one of which was born here. And we, for our first 1.5 years, lived in the capital city, and we studied language while we were there. But we also, one of the biggest blessings was while we were studying language, we started on campuses. And I was loving where I was serving. It was this big residential university, had a great solid core group of leaders. And in the midst of that, the ministry here in Costa Rica asked our family to consider to go and pioneer in a new location. And so we were open to that. We wanted to do whatever the movement here wanted for us. And so we began talking with the general secretary here about where to go. And we ended up moving to the south about 4 hours, not very far from this capital city, but 4-hour drive because it's over a mountain called the Mountain of Death. So we live about 4 hours from the capital. And when they first asked us to go, honestly, this is one of the things that I learned. I felt like in my American mindset, it wasn't very strategic. I was in this like giant capital city where most of the university students are. And there aren't that many staff there. Why are you asking us to go? But we were willing to go. We were so willing. And so we went, and we're in this little community. There's probably 70,000 people here. but it had a small university. It's it's a kind of a community university. There's no residents on campus. And it just did, for me, it didn't feel strategic. But as we were there, we learned more about the heart of the ministry here in Costa Rica, and how they long not just for big groups on campus, but that every student in the country could have an opportunity for a witnessing community. And so even though the campus here wasn't very big, there was zero ministry happening in all of this area of the South. And it had been a dream for the movement of ECU to have a ministry and kind of representing the students of the South that often get overlooked. And so as we were there, I just really felt God's heart in new ways or like reminding me that like my ministry doesn't have to be strategic, but in the midst of you following our call and going and being invited to this place, like I'll show up, and there's so much need in wherever you are. And so we've been able to pioneer for a year before the pandemic, and now we're in the midst of pioneering with pandemic. And I would say we've just seen God like at work. And I would say join him wherever you sense God at work, like join him. And so so I think we have to have eyes to see. So there's this prayer that I would say before I step on campus of, God, would you give me your heart, or will you give me your eyes today as I step on campus, so that I don't miss the one person that's before me. And it's been a work of being faithful to show up every day, even if no one else came, but to be present. And so I think for us, it's been a ministry of presence of, well, I don't have any meetings today on campus, but I'm going to go to campus and I'm going to see what God might do and try to have eyes to see. And so many times, me or my husband, I feel like my husband has more stories where he like sat down and then felt God kind of move in his heart, like, see that student over there? Like, you should go sit at that table. And or like he was prepping a Bible study with one of the student leaders, and it was like, oh, you should sit down at that table, even though there's a student there. And she overheard them preparing the Bible study that we were going to have that week. And the girl that was sitting there, her name is Maria, she's now part of our group. She was like, my pastors gave that message on that same passage at church on Sunday. And so she came. So I just say like this, there's a ministry of presence. There's this something about being persistent to go every day that's really important, even when it feels hard or you feel like there's nothing to do. There's always something to do, and God almost always is faithful to help me meet a person, or I use that time just praying and being and see that as a ministry. So maybe not strategic, but necessary would be my first thing. Persistent and showing up and kind of joining where God's at work. And I think, I don't know, is that my time?
You're good. Go ahead.
I just think we have to be creative, and we have to be willing to kind of step out of our comfort zone. And so, and I did this with my students. I never did it alone. And so one of the things that I tried to do was help my students have the ideas. So it was like, okay, guys, I want to meet some new people. How could we meet them? And let's create some new way to meet people. So one of the examples was like, okay, well, we don't have much money, but we could buy bananas and hand out bananas on campus. And so we wrote little messages on the bananas to give out.
Awesome.
So I just feel like there's something about, you just have to meet people when you're pioneering. It doesn't matter if it's just like sitting at a sign, but you have to talk with them. You have to have interaction. And as you have interaction, God will open up conversation that's like, oh, that's a person I need to meet with again or again. And so like no one ever came to us, came to came to our Bible study, but it would be through these individual not meetings, but individual connections, where then we invited the student to come to a Bible study or to a gathering. So
Great.
I'll stop there.
That's great. Thanks, Rachel. And thanks, Eugene and Mandy and Carly, for dropping in quotes into the chat. That's awesome. I love that sense of strategicness, which is probably a value that you grew up with and you came on staff with, was pushed a little bit, and to be open to both what the movement asks you to do and also what the Holy Spirit is inviting you to do on a daily basis. And I think that's a great posture and great thing for planting. You know, we may have our plans. Proverbs says that humans make their plans, but God guides the steps. And I see that happening in your ministry. So thanks so much, Rachel. And now we're going to go over to Valeria, and she is a student at in Monterrey, Mexico, and she's going to share with us from her experience.
Thank you, Kurt. Do you think I can share the screen?
You can. Do you have permission to do that?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Okay, just give me. Great.
Perfect.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So hello, friends. My name is Valeria. I'm a Compass student and volunteer staff, and I'll be sharing a little bit about my experience with planting with high school students ministry. So a little bit about the backstory. Oops, sorry. I've been an online university student since 2017, so it's been a while. And the time when I switched to this new program, I had more availability and I wanted to explore new ways that I can still be connected to Compa. And in this time, I saw an opportunity to start something new in high school campus. So this is actually the high school campus that I used to go to when I was a high school student. And at this time, there were different students that I knew that I've met before that were in this high school campus. So in a way, I had connections there. And I saw a need right in this campus. There was nothing going on before. So I believe that God was really shaping in me a heart to reach out to high school students. And there were different key experiences that he confirmed that he was calling me to start something there. So then what happened? Well, first I started seeking connections, and I asked myself what students do I had connections with in this campus, and I contacted them. We gathered and I shared the vision with them, and I invited them to be part of this, and I listened to their ideas, and together we come up with different strategies that were faithful to their own context and their own needs. And so then finally we started gathering weekly to have a Bible study small group at their campus. And at first I was the one that was leading the Bible study, but then a couple of months later, I started getting together with a couple of student leaders Saturday mornings at Tim Hortons. And we used to gather at a cafe, and it was a time where I was able to get closer to the student leaders and a little bit similar to what Rachel said, so that I could get to meet them more and just had this relationship with them, with the student leaders. And in this time, we would get together and pray and just listen to each other's, struggles and what we were going through in this season of our lives. And we would have a Bible study, and it was a way that they were practicing how to study the Bible and then later on lead the Bible study. And so then finally, a couple of weeks after we were gathering on Saturday mornings, they were able to lead the Bible studies by themselves. And that's kind of like what happened. And from there, it just continued growing, and they were inviting their friends. And yeah, that's where we're at right now. And so here are some key findings that I learned from this experience. And so number one and most important is that God was already present in the campus. And it wasn't like I was taking God's presence there. He was already there, he was already working, and I was just joining him in that. And I could see that he was working in the heart of the students already because of the way that students responded. They were curious, they were open, they were interested. And there were some key experiences as well that confirmed that God had favor in this group, and he was providing, he was guiding us. And we could see that also when we prayed, and God was guiding us into different new activities, new plans, new strategies. So we were able to feel his presence and his guidance. And then another thing I will say, it's the value of one-to-one meetings with students. This goes back to kind of like the meeting that I shared about, where I will get together with the student leaders in a cafe, and it was just a time I really enjoyed doing this, just getting to know them and strengthening the relationships, and a time for discipleship and leadership, investing in them, kind of like what Mario said as well, to investing in leadership, and to provide formation and training, so that just give them resources that they can continue growing. And then finally, I learned the importance of adapting to the campus context and students' reality. So this is just listening to the students' reality and the context of their campus, identifying their specific needs and acting according to those. So sometimes I feel like we go into planting and we have our own idea, like we want this to do this way, but sometimes we need to, or all the times we need to understand that each campus is different, and also like the students' reality is different in each campus. So we need to ask them questions. We need to kind of research a little bit what's going on, what are their needs, and kind of adapt to that, being willing to adapt. An example of this is that, well, you know, this last year with the whole pandemic, we had to change our way to meet, and we started having an online Bible study. And that's kind of how we are continue meeting online, and that's kind of like where we are at right now. So right now we're still getting together weekly to have Bible studies, and we have also found the need to be creative and to find new ways to provide to the students' needs. So there's always changes, and there's always new specific needs that we need to learn to adapt. And yeah, that's kind of where we are right now. That's it.
Thanks, Valeria. No, that's really great. I appreciate that you started with gathering people and creating vision together, and then trying to hand off leadership and invite students into more leadership. And that's a beautiful story. And I appreciate how you just raised the bar of this whole webinar to have a good presentation. You know, leave it to our student representative to show us how it's done. So thank you very much. And I also saw that you had people in your home. I recognize your home.
Really? Yes.
That's hospitality and food. I know everyone else probably noticed every table had food on it, and having people in your home, your family involved, that's beautiful as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we're going to go over to Tommy Wilkerson. Tommy is an university, or started as an university student and staff, met his partner for life on campus in the US, who happened to be from the Cayman Islands. And part of the arrangement was they moved to the Cayman Islands for several years where there was no IFES movement. So he became a planter, served with University Link as well. And now he's serving a church in the Tampa area. So Tommy, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know how I'm supposed to follow that presentation. I'm like, oh my goodness, why is this my luck? But a lot of what Kurt has said is part of what I was going to mention, that, yeah, so my wife and I, we moved to the Cayman Islands. She was from there. And I had some previous planting experience with a community college out in Tampa, Florida, where we're based now. But yeah, because there was nothing officially happening with the IFES in the country we were stationed or living, the entire work was a work of pioneering. But what I found really interesting, in that, you know, Valeria hinted at least, or she said in her presentation, is that when I got there, I found that similarly, God was up to something. He was already doing things. And so even though there was nothing officially happening with the IFES in the country, there were enough alumni who had experiences with the ministry and with with previous student movements in other countries to where they had started groups in their schools. And so a lot of my work with the secondary schools was just kind of connecting dots and getting people together and saying, hey, wouldn't this be cool if we were something together? Like, you have your little group and you have your little group, but what if we could find a sense of communal belonging with each other? And so that was pretty unique for us. And then, yeah, there was nothing happening at the university. And so we got there, and I think one of the, fondest memories I have of doing university ministry, well, two things. Well, the first day was, yeah, we were doing some outreach, and I had a couple of students that I had met through other students who said, these are probably the best Christians that I know, you should talk to them. And I said, okay, well, first day of school, I didn't really have any major expectations of what we could do or should do. We didn't have a table set up or anything. I just figured we'd prayer walk the campus, and I had a couple of contact cards on hand in case we bumped into somebody. And the students just took the contact cards and just ran through the campus and like met their friends, got their friends' information, had their friends fill out. All the contact cards were done, just filled out. They had friends writing on their information on the back of cards. And this was just the beginning. Like, here I was thinking, oh man, we're not going to do much today. I really just kind of want to get a feel for the campus. And students just said, this is what we feel like God is doing. We're excited. We're pumped. Let's go. And so that whole semester was a blast of meeting students and talking with them. And that summer, I remember we tried to have kind of like a discipleship group because, yeah, it just felt like that was a key need in the island, was just discipleship. And, I had, personally met with all these students and invited them to different conferences that we were doing and invited them into the summer. And I remember the first night of this discipleship group, only one student came. And the one student that came was not the student that I had even talked to at all the previous semester. So I have no idea how they ended up at my house, but they were there, and, we had a really good conversation, and they, they were were interested in Jesus, but taking a step back in their faith, and they're wanting to recommit their lives to Jesus. And so right there in my living room, he recommitted his life to Jesus, and that student ended up being, a key leader in our chapter for a number of years, and was probably a better evangelist than me. He would just find students, share his faith, and he just had a sense of what the Holy Spirit was doing in the moment, and he would invite them to respond to Jesus, and they would. And it was just absolutely remarkable. I valued that deeply. And so, I mean, a lot of what has been said is what I found to be true in terms of success. I think the one thing that, if I had to like boil it down into a word, it's flexibility. It's God will surprise you. So be open to whatever he's doing. He's going before you. He's doing it as you're there. And everything is going to look a little bit different than you originally planned. And so you have to be okay with failure and failing quickly so that you can succeed quicker, or like also quickly. And so, yeah, just not having a firm grasp on anything, but being willing to adapt and to adjust, as was mentioned before. And then, like people have already said, the importance of getting students involved in that work and empowering them early on. I found that the longer you hold on to it, the more students will believe that this is something that you do and not something that they do. And so, oh no, this is your group, this is your Bible study, this is your large group meeting. But the sooner you hand it off to them and empower them, they have a sense of ownership. More students come because they see somebody who's their age that speaks the language and understands what they're going through. And they get so much more out of it. So that's kind of what I found in my experience in planting.
That's great. One thing you just said that's going to stick is like, fail quickly so you can learn and move on. And, some of us are going to be planting a small group or maybe a new campus. Some of you may have the opportunity to help plant a whole country, as Tommy did. So God is not going to be held back if he's got plans for you. So thanks, Tommy. And our next and our last person sharing is Shuyin from Montreal, Canada. And She works for InterVarsity in Canada, and we are glad to have you with us as well. So take it away, Shuyin.
Hi, friends. It's great to hear all this different story. So I think my sharing is a little bit a different perspective. So I've been on staff more than 10 years, and the country of Canada actually is bigger than US in terms of the land, yet our population is only 1/10 of the country. So you can imagine practically how do you do planting in terms of staff. So our number of staff is also 1/10 of InterVarsity USA. So how do you actually multiply those land? So I got this role as national planting a few years ago. And so what I'm going to share following the three things that I want to share, maybe a little bit longer perspective, and maybe hopefully will increase more people, more students and staff to join what God is doing. So let me share screen with you. So now you all can see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I think the first thing I want to share is about defining planting. As you see, actually, there's all kind of way, probably some of you, have done this. This is basil, where I put it in the water and then it grow, roots. This is actually a lemon. It got grow a little bit. I have another lemon tree right here. I thought, hey, if I can grow this lemon from seed, maybe I can try another one. But this one, as you see, a little bit dying. So I've seen some hope, and then it's kind of gone down. And then there are some other cactus. Some is growing a little bit, and then eventually it will grow like this. But it takes a long time. And then others, these really, you see what's going on. I know, I have no idea. It doesn't seem showing up. I wonder if it's the weather in Montreal. It's quite cold now. It's supposed to be outside. It need to be a summer. So this kind of a seed, really the seed that is in there, it's not happening. But I kind of, let's wait until summer. And then here you have the three. This another kind of cactus. I actually bought the seed. They, it's very promising. Hey, I pay for this. This is supposed to be good, but as you see, nothing is coming out. And then here is some green onion. You also know green onion you can just cut the head and then put it in a plant earth, and then it can grow. So, and then you continue to eat those onions, but it has actually a limited time. So I think after 2-3 times you cut this, the plant eventually will die by itself, even though you have roots. So it does not go forever. And then here is another plant. It's an aloe, but it will grow a little bit baby, we call, on the side. So sometimes we have decision, do I cut it and then replant it? Is it also a planting and then grow from there? Or just leave it right here, then I have more plants. Because why am I sharing this kind? As we're thinking of different campuses, you have city, you have suburb, you have a fellowship, and then but maybe going on something kind of next campus or distant. Is it called planting because it's from this mother tree? Or is it from different kind of seed that some really grow nice in water, but when you transplant, it may not grow? So I just want to expand kind of a little bit planting, what kind of planting can happening. And then here is, I want to talk about second point, it's the expectation. So expectation here, let me move it. Can I move? Okay, yeah, there you go. So planting is, we're talking about kind of a cycle. It's right here in this exploration. Some of you are already talking about what's before on that, even geographically, the city or the campus. I think it is important to understand or to study what happened before, what are the people in there, what God is already doing, and then you go here. And then these are the expectations. Some of you are already talking about creative, messiness, uncertainty. I find, if we don't have the right expectation, people get discouraged very easily. they try one thing, second thing, and then by the third time, no one show up in the Bible study, and then they decided that's not working. But that is kind of the nature. If you're trying exploration phase, what's going on here? These are some of the things, and then eventually your hope. Different campuses of different country, what is the expectation of the planting? After 3 years, do you still call it planting? What is it that you hope to grow, birth, and develop to a next stage of the fellowship or the small group? The third, I want to share, all of you already testified this, is the Holy Spirit. And I always find this passage very curious. I don't know, there's no answer. You kind of like theologically, how do you answer it? But the third aspect is discernment. We need to discern what God is growing here. We may want to grow flower, but he's deciding to grow a cactus. It takes longer time because it affects your expectation. But we have to see what it is actually God is growing here. So Acts 16, allow me to read it to you. They went through the region of Syria and Galatia, and having been forbidden by the Holy Spirit to speak the word in Asia. I find it's always like, really? That's the Holy Spirit forbidden them to certain place? I thought we should go all places. Then they have come to opposite Mysia. They attempt to go into, there's so many names, Bithynia. But the Spirit of Jesus did not allow them. So what, really? Is it really still God's will? Like the Spirit of Jesus would not allow them? So passing by Mysia, they went down to Taurus. So even it seems a discouragement that they could not go to Mysia, but they went down. It's kind of a second choice. But that is still the Spirit's work. So my third sharing, it's really learn to discern, not just looking at what's growing or comparison. I think sometimes it's another challenge when we compare some of those stories that share, in Mexico, that stuff, she's doing so great. And then I invite so many people, but no one show up, even though I bought all the food. So that's kind of what I had for you all.
Sorry, I muted. Thanks, Shuyan. That was great. Yeah, I love that. Being guided by the Spirit is so crucial. And sometimes you feel like we're going this way, and it's like, no, there's another direction that God's leading. And also, I just love the image. I think that image is going to stick with us of the different pots. That just because there's not a plant growing yet doesn't mean God isn't doing something. And there's a lot to be said about prayer and preparation.